you have to be really intentional about putting a team together.
Crawled out of the pound and started screaming.
How good is Joey Bosa?
Herbert, rolling, looking, throwing, end zone, touchdown. It's intercepted. Derwin James. Derwin was there.
You got to be on a mission every day in the NFL. But even more than that, you got to be on a mission together.
Great hands, Keenan Allen.
The Los Angeles Chargers select Rashawn Slater.
Asante Samuel Jr.
Stop! Oh, I'm stopping y'all boys. I can't catch it.
Intercepted. Picked up by Michael Davis.
Explosion. Explosiveness from Eckler. There's Murphy. Boy, he blew that up, didn't he?
It is picked off. Nasir Adderley. 50-50 ball is 100%. Mike Williams.
Ojena Nwosu. And that will end it.
Time to bolt up.
Welcome to another episode of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. Today's show, of course, being brought to you by UFC Fit in Temecula, Charger Bolt Family, Golden Road Brewery, and MyBookie. Oh, Dan Wolkenstein. If you need a blanket, if you need a bottle, I just want you to know that I'm here for you today. Because, like so many things historically with this Chargers franchise, we can only have good things for so long. The glory is with this team for such a finite amount of time. We felt that the Chargers were getting back on track after two straight losses. Last week, they go out and they beat the Eagles. Justin Herbert looks like the guy that we had seen for the first 5 weeks. Minnesota Vikings coming to town. Plenty of storylines going into this one. And that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What? I can only imagine, because I had a lot of feelings running through my mind and being expressed vocally, whether it was profanities, whether it was laughter, whether it was confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, I wasn't at the game, you were.
Mm-hmm.
For the love of God, give me just a glimpse into the demeanor of the Chargers fan base there at SoFi.
Whew! Okay, before we get to the specifics of that, welcome to Chargers Unleashed. For those who do not yet follow or subscribe, be sure to check us out everywhere. You see up at the top right, we are in all social media platforms, of course, in YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, follow, hit those subscription buttons, as well as bell notifications. We're here for you. We have a fun show today. As Jake mentioned, we are going to get into the vibe at SoFi. At least that's how it felt the team played. We're going to get into some fan reactions and some voicemails. What went wrong? Some live reactions from Jake. And honestly, we're going to get into some truth bombs here. And this isn't going to be all sunshine and rainbows, as Jake likes to call it. We're going to shoot this one straight like we always do. And stick with us, because we're going to get real here for a bit. So to answer your question, Jake, what was the vibe like at SoFi? Honestly, for most of the game, the vibe at SoFi was pretty darn electric. I think of all the games so far this season, that was the loudest Chargers fans have been. There was a ton of Chargers fans. I would say probably 55, 45. And if you can remember, last time Vikings came out, they overloaded the soccer stadium, came out all over social media. Vikings fans showed up. There's a ton of them, but there's also a ton of Chargers fans there. Thunder Alley was incredible. Kay Adams was there. You saw a ton of celebrities show up to the game. I think Bad Bunny was randomly there too.
Yes, he was.
So atmosphere, great. It appeared that there were many folks that were just there to see refs call penalties all day, because that's what it felt like at times. In terms of the Chargers specifically, I don't know about you, Jake. It felt to me that this Chargers offense was, for the large portion of this game, stuck in mud. And we'll get into like the reasons why. It just felt very like there was too much headwind constantly. And whether it's penalties, whether it's drops, whether it's people can make up all the reasons why. It was just painful sometimes. And you're so not used to seeing that with the Chargers-led offense. I don't think Justin Herbert eclipsed the 200 mark in passing offense. So the vibe was kind of like you're thinking, okay, we're gonna get going. Chargers go up 4 in the third quarter. You're feeling okay. We got this to get the ball back. You're like, man, they can go up 2 scores. Here we go. Chargers obviously don't score. We know what happens afterwards. We'll get into a quick recap here in a sec, but I would just say it was a frustrating game. And I would imagine being the coaching staff and probably being the players, it's frustrating to them too. And I have so many feelings about this game. I don't even know where to start right now. But I think a good place, Jake, if you were to come up with like the biggest takeaways, biggest storylines, if you had a couple, 2 or 3, what would be your keys to that loss? Like, we'll get into all the crazy specifics, but like if you just had like the overarching, here are the reasons that game was lost, what would they be?
I mean, it's weird because there's so much blame that could be put on this loss. There was a lot of things that really just came out completely flat. Others surprised you in somewhat of a good way, but I think when you really look at it, you have to start with Justin Herbert. There were errant throws made on his part, and then he would turn it around, and then he would have that just absolute dime that he puts on the money to Keenan Allen, and you're just like, okay, that's the Justin Herbert that we know. Thread the needle, defender right there. Doesn't matter. Keenan Allen catches the ball. It was an amazing play, and it's almost like Herbert's 1A, because at the same time, when Herbert couldn't make the throws, when he couldn't make the plays, and then that's one thing. But then when Herbert is able to make a throw, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Jalen Guyton all had crucial drops throughout this game. I will not give the drop to Jared Cook because, to his credit, he actually made a great effort in catching the ball where it was placed practically down to his legs. And the defender did what the defender needed to do and hit the arms, which dislodged the ball. So I'm not putting that on Jared Cook. That was a great defensive play. So really it's 1A and 1B is Justin Herbert not getting on the same pages with the receivers. And then when you really needed it to count, the receivers just were not making the plays that they needed to make. Say what you will about the interception. Obviously, that was a big turning point in the game. Difference of 7 points because the Vikings were able to get a turnover on that. But hey, say what you will about that pass. I don't know many linebackers that are making that play that Eric Kendricks make. I mean, what a hell of an interception that was. But Justin Herbert, we have to fully admit, for the better part of 3 of the last of the 4 games, has not looked like himself. And this could totally be a product of the defensive schemes getting to him, confusing him, which he said that he has, but also from the coaching standpoint. Joe Lombardi does not escape this conversation whatsoever. I know that there was the grid that was put out of where Justin Herbert's ball placements were and his average yards per play. I think there were 2 times during this game that were meant to be deep throws. One ended up being incomplete, and I think it was actually the second play of the Chargers' first offensive series, Dan, where this was the play where Herbert rolls out. I thought it was going to probably be the exact same rollout that he was going to that he threw to Mike Williams in the Philly game, but of course he lost his footing, gets sacked, But again, I ask the question, why is this not happening more often? It just seems like it has been drawn back to such a conservative offense that when you have weapons like these, and you have a coach that has been talking about since the bye of being more aggressive, having a higher tempo in early down situations, and you're just not seeing that. Now, I know that was a big reason, number one. Number two, I'll say this. Defensively, there was a lot that I was actually pleasantly surprised with this team, specifically for the run game. I expected Dalvin Cook to just be the focal point of this offense and absolutely shred this running defense that we have put on a pedestal and lauded for its absolute greatness. but that didn't happen. The Chargers actually did a very decent job in defending the run. And they were getting pressure to Kirk Cousins, something that they had not done consistently over the last couple of games.
Like they had what, like 20 pressures or so, roughly?
Whatever it was. People were finding ways to get in on Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
But Dan, there is zero excuse for 3rd and 15, 2nd and 20, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 6, and 3rd and 20. All conversions, and this is, of course, being brought to you by Daniel Popper on Twitter, but all conversions that were done by Justin Herbert or Adam Thielen.
Justin Jefferson.
Or, excuse me. God. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, excuse me. That was your 3rd down defense.
How many, and real quick, how many was that?
How many conversions was that?
Yeah, just the ones that you just marked off.
That was 7.
Okay. All right. So, I kind of figured, and I was going to make sure I let you kind of get through your points before I unloaded here on how much, to some extent, I disagree with the first part. I watched that game live, and it was incredibly frustrating, and it was very ugly. Like the 2nd and 4th quarters specifically were awful, and it was horrible to watch. Going back and watching the game film and watching the tape, it actually wasn't nearly as bad as it was live. So, to one extent, those who were not at the game, you're fortunate that you got to see what you did. But I want to call a spade a spade. I want to kind of push back a little bit on some of the narratives of what we're hearing from, whether it's pundits, whether we're hearing it from Chargers fans, from folks on Twitter, from whatever. I honestly don't think Justin Herbert had a bad game. There were some throws that were off. There was the off throw behind the shoulder a little bit. I mean, it was behind the shoulder, but also that Kendricks interception was ridiculous. Like, of course he makes an interception. I think there was one throw, I want to say it was to Josh Palmer, that Josh Palmer was supposed to do. He had a kind of option route, was supposed to either stop or cut in, and he did his little wiggle room where he faked to go left. Justin Herbert thought he was going to stop. Then he goes in and he throws it behind him. That's not Herbert's fault. There was one throw, I think it was to Austin Eckler on kind of the wheel route that was completely blanketed. There's no reason why that should have been thrown. Otherwise, Justin Herbert actually looked pretty good to me. You mentioned some of the drops. You mentioned the dime he threw to Keenan Allen, where I don't know how he got that there, to be honest. And then people talk about the lack of deep shots and lack of aggression. I 100% disagree. I think there were 4, if not 5 times that I saw Justin Herbert go back with one of those deep shot attempts. There was a sack, I remember at the very beginning of the game, that would have gone if he didn't have someone bearing down on him. There was, I think, 1 or 2 that got checked down There was another that ended up being pass interference. And there was another one that ended up being a holding call, I believe. So that's 5 deep shots that were attempted, and either due to penalty, due to sack, or due to check down, looked like it was not a deep shot. So when you just check box scores and you check charts, it doesn't tell the full story. I saw that same chart that you saw, and I went back and looked at it because I was curious. I was like, okay, it didn't feel that way live, but checking the box score and checking what ended up happening, it looked like a different story. In terms of play calling, I don't want to say the one issue, but the main issue that I have with the play calling, Jake, is it doesn't seem creative enough in the sense that it's not lack of aggression, it's lack of flexibility, lack of nuance. You know, like you watch like the 49ers offense with Shanahan, you watch the Rams offense, you watch the Chiefs offense, you watch the Bucs offense, and you see motion everywhere. You see a lot of these pitch plays, a lot of this misdirection, a lot of this easy run or pass via the run or vice versa. Like, we're not seeing that. Like, how many times are you seeing like a shovel pitch pass to any one of our running backs, or to Andre Roberts, or to Keenan Allen, or to either one of the tight ends? You're not.
That's a great point, Dan, because even if we're to take Joe Lombardi at his word, if you remember earlier on in the season, before the regular season even kicked off, what did he say that he wanted to have for Austin Eckler? Use him in an Alvin Kamara type role.
Yep, not seeing that right now.
Not seeing that at all.
Now, the one thing I will say, and we're going to get real here for a sec, I actually like the way our defense played. Our defense actually, in my opinion, played great, all things considered. And people, I'm trying to contain myself here. People want to find excuses. They want to find blame because, like, it makes it easier to heal. It makes it easier to fix a problem when you can find the problem. Unfortunately, like, people are pointing fingers at the wrong locations most of the time that I have seen.
Oh, it'll be interesting to hear this.
I put a question out on Twitter, and I said, if it was up to you, where would you place the blame? And I'm hearing literally everything. I'm hearing we should go back to Shane Steichen. I'm hearing Lombardi should be fired. I'm saying Brandon Staley should be fired. Offensive play calls are horrible. Drops are bad. Defense is terrible. Time management's awful. No aggression on offense. Lack of depth. I'm hearing all of these reasons why we lost that game. And honestly, what people don't want to hear is sometimes your best players just do not make as many plays as the other team's best players. That's not coaching. That's not aggression. That's not depth. That is just simple math. You look at that coupled with, we hear people talk all the time about this game of mismatches, and that's how games are won and lost. You find and exploit mismatches. Unfortunately, Chargers go up against a team that have arguably 2 of the top 10 receivers in the NFL. At the same time that the Chargers are without their top corner and their second best safety and another safety, to where they're relying on their third and fourth string cornerbacks to be guarding these stud receivers. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, people don't want to admit this for some reason. They played better than our top guys. They made more plays than our top guys. Now, you hear a lot of people talk about after the game, Jake, where they say, like, win as a team, lose a team. I'm talking specifically the players. You heard a lot of that from them. And it's hard not to point fingers because I think in this game, there were some things that were exposed. And people say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that Brandon Staley wouldn't make any adjustments wouldn't do anything with Ronaldo Hill where they wouldn't let Tavon Campbell go somewhere else so he doesn't keep getting burned by Justin Jefferson. If people watched, Tavon Campbell wasn't just getting beat by Justin Jefferson, and they weren't just targeting Justin Jefferson. They put Chris Harris on Justin Jefferson. Where'd they go? They went to Adam Thielen, matched up against who, Jake? Tavon Campbell. The Chargers were moving people around to try to not allow that mismatch, but unfortunately they had two guys, and we just didn't have the horses to compete with them. Let me give you some numbers here, okay? For folks who sit here and say we should cut Tavon Campbell. Tavon Campbell needs to go. Can't believe Tavon Campbell gave up all these passes. I absolutely can believe that Tavon Campbell got roasted on all of these plays. How can you expect Tavon Campbell to go out and compete and win against Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen? Like, think about that. And when you put him on the other, he goes the other way. Now people say, why? There's no reason this should be schemed differently. First, you're pissed off that the Chargers can't stop the run. The Chargers stop the run. Now you're pissed off that they can't stop the pass. Just stop.
Nobody's going to be happy, Ken.
No, but what is the truth is that Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen exposed the weak point of this team, which is the secondary, specifically when their best corner and their best safety other than Derwin James is not playing. And so at the end of the day, there's only so many corners and safeties that you have on your team. So when you go through, Jake, when I was listening to you talk about those third down conversions you mentioned, this is how this game was lost, okay? I'm going to read off some of these plays here in sequential order. And you tell me where you noticed the theme, okay? 3rd and 15. Justin Jefferson gets an 18-yard reception on Tavon Campbell. Tavon Campbell actually had a defensive pass interference. Didn't matter. Still got it. Later on in the second quarter, 2nd and 20, Jake. Justin Jefferson beats Tavon Campbell. Deep route, about 20 yards, middle of the field. Midway through the third quarter. Your defense just got a 3 and out. You're up 4. Offense gets the ball right back. Go 3 and out. And then Campbell gives up another first down for 27 yards. Ends in a touchdown. 12 minutes left, Jake. Fourth quarter. 3rd and 9. 3rd and 9. Adam Thielen. First down. 16-yard catch on Tavon Campbell. 3rd and 6, Jake. 2 minutes left. Justin Jefferson, back shoulder fade. Great catch. 27 yards on Tavon Campbell. 3rd and 20. 2.5 minutes left. Ball game. 3rd and 20. 18-yard catch by Adam Thielen on none other than guess who? Tavon Campbell. That's not just one person beating him. That's them exploiting and finding him on the field and trusting your guys to make plays. Their guys made plays. Our guys did not. Derwin James had an opportunity to get an interception in the end zone. Didn't happen. Our defense had countless opportunities. Didn't happen. At the end of the day, their guys made more plays than we did, and we got beat. This wasn't an out-coached thing. Imagine Ronaldo Hill, Jake, and Brandon Staley sitting there, and they're running the exact same scheme, exact same defensive plays. And they've got Jalen Ramsey matched up in the same position as Tavon Campbell. And they've got Mike Davis or Asante Samuel or whoever on the other guy. You think all of those receptions are given up? Like, they just didn't have the guys. And you can say all you want about scheme, Jake. There's no coincidence that of the 278 total passing yards that this Vikings team had, Tavon Campbell gave up 6 catches, 127 yards, 5 first downs, and an 18-yard gain to set up that losing 4th down play by himself. That's almost half of the total yardage on one corner. Not by just one person, but by several all game long. So we could sit here and talk about how bad the defense played. I don't think the defense played bad. They just played. They had individual plays at the worst times. And coaches had them in the right positions. You can't blame the coaches for Austin Eckler dropping a ball in the middle of the field that should have been a touchdown. Mike Williams drops the ball in the middle of it, like right at the goal line. People aren't running to the sticks. They're short. At some point, people have to be able to just accept the fact it was an ugly game. Offense couldn't get out of their own way sometimes. They couldn't get any rhythm. They didn't do any of the no huddle. We could talk about some ways to fix it. But the Vikings just made more plays. And people can't admit that. They want to find the fall guy. Brandon Staley is getting way more credit than he deserves. He should be fired. Joe Lombardi isn't being aggressive enough. Herbert's regressing this year. Mike Williams, now we're all of a sudden rescinding our contract for the blank check. Like, I know I've gone off on a long tangent here, but it's troublesome to me when people are just desperate to make up any reason and find any excuse to fire everyone because that's the easy decision and that's the easy option, but they don't actually watch what's happening. And the Vikings team is a good team. They're probably the best 3. They were the best 3 and 5 team I've seen in a long time. That offense is stacked. That defense is always pretty darn good. This game, in my opinion, was 100% a game of mismatches and matchups, and the Chargers just didn't take advantage of them. We didn't. We tried. A lot of the big plays got blown up. Go back and watch. And on defense, everything was there, and then you just didn't have the horses. Now, we could talk about draft picks. We could talk about getting ready for depth and all that jazz. We could talk about all of that. But at some point, you're down. Your team is going up against arguably probably the best receiving core at a time when you are down the most sick corners that you need to be able to support that. And it just bad matchup. Linval Joseph looked great. Nwosu looked great. Kaiser White looked great. You saw Amen go up and actually get a sack. You saw lots of good things. We didn't miss a field goal. We didn't miss an extra point. There's a lot of good that came out of this game. And the team just got beat. The Rams just got railroaded by the Niners. All of a sudden, the Niners are 4-5, Jake. They could be in the playoffs. It's a long season. There are ebbs and flows. But, have some perspective and just, take a step back for a second. You could be frustrated. But just be careful where you're pointing the blame. Because you can overcorrect and you're right back to where you are. I know I just went off on a 10-minute rant. It felt really good, but I felt like I went a little long, and people are probably tuning out by now. So I think they might need your optimism, Jake, to kind of bring this back. Because
optimism. First of all, let me explain something to you. I'm not going to allow the positivity pill to be force-fed down my throat. I will agree with you on this, Dan. Yes, people need the other P word. That's perspective. Perspective. Not positivity, perspective.
Okay, I like that.
And yes, in that, bowl of loudmouth soup that you just spewed out over the last 10 minutes, a lot to unpack there. So, you and I I know we didn't really get a chance to talk about this that much beforehand, but you and I were not already feeling positive going into this game when you're reading the injury report that Mike Davis is going to miss another week. And then, of course, Nasir Adderley was late inactive when it came to game time. It was a true game time decision, and he didn't end up going. And, of course, everything that happened with Drew Tranquill getting COVID on Thursday before the game. There is definitely depth issues when it comes to this team. If you could really point at something over the last 4 weeks for the fact that this team has gone 1-3 in that span, the injuries and the lack of depth have shown up. Now, am I going to use that as an excuse? Hell no. Absolutely not. I refuse to do that. It is what it is. And whether or not you're going to sit here and say, oh, this player X needs to go, or that's Telesco's fault, that's all subjective. And that's totally fine if you want to have whichever opinion on that, because it's understandable. But the Chargers, for the most part, for several years, have always been a top-heavy team as far as players go at their respective positions. And then normally behind that, your second and your third string guys they can't hold the weight of it. And when you lose a number of vital guys like this, and going up against the teams that the Chargers have, yeah, you're going to sustain losses like this. And you damn sure felt it against New England. You damn sure felt it against Baltimore. And wow, did you feel it yesterday against the Vikings. But aside from that, Dan, yeah, it's a shame to be talking about giving up a receiving game that, again, prior to yesterday's defeat in Minnesota, the Chargers gave up their most explosive plays, had not allowed a 100-yard receiver, even with the injuries that we've had against Baltimore, New England, even going in there against Philly, we had not allowed a 100-yard receiver in a single game, if my memory serves me correctly. And Justin Jefferson became the first yesterday. Not a surprise.
I think Devonta Smith was the first one, and then
Justin Jefferson. I'm sorry, you're right. My fault. It was 100-yard receivers in back-to-back games. So yes, you had it in Philly. Chris Harris had a day to forget that day, and Tavon Campbell said, "Hold my beer, I'll one up you," and he had a day to forget yesterday. So it's just a shame. Especially when you look at the valiant effort that the Chargers' run defense put in. Because for the most part, we would have thought for sure that Dalvin Cook was going to be such an integral part of this offense. And that didn't end up being the case. I think you actually held him to under 4 yards a carry. He did not end up having, huge runs of 20 yards a clip that I would have figured that he would have gotten. The usual 167 yards per game that this 32nd ranked rush defense has so, valiantly put up was not it. That looked like a much improved run defense. Linebackers were hitting the gap better. Interior defensive lines were getting off their block better and able to make plays. That looked better. The pressure was better. And Chinonwusu was getting free. Kenneth Murray was used on 4 snaps at the edge. He didn't end up getting any pressures, but, what are you going to do? I even saw Fackrell even get back there and make some plays. So for the weeks and weeks and weeks that we have been yawning for someone to step up and make a play opposite of Joey Bosa, that finally was there. But the secondary was just the crippling factor of this defense. And yeah, there's only so much you can do when you have certain personnel. But,
I mean, again, Jake, you're out Ryan Smith, Mark Webb, Nasir Adderley, Mike Davis.
I didn't even mention Mark Webb, so thank you.
You're down 4 guys in your secondary. And so people could talk about, your lack of depth. You lost literally half your squad.
I think one of the things that you were saying, Dan, is, and this is something that you could say for the Chargers in a number of different scenarios, going back years in certain games. When you talked about Minnesota exploiting mismatches, For some reason, when the Chargers get those opportunities, and I think that they had it with the array of players that Minnesota did not have out there defensively, I think the Chargers are allergic to exploiting mismatches. Even against Philly, when Darius Slay went out for a number of different plays, and they had their rookie coming in. And again, as I was saying, I was sitting next to my Philly buddy at the time. I was like, well, that's not going to matter because they're not going to even look to exploit that matchup anyways. Who cares? I don't get it. And maybe that was another reason of frustration that people
100%.
have of the ineptitude of this offense. Well, it's like, if it's so easy for them to do it, they're playing with a couple of hands tied behind their back with certain players that they don't have out there. Why are we not able to do the same? Why are we not able to exploit those?
It's a great question. But when you watch the film, you hear a lot of people saying like, "Oh, Justin Herbert's the reason why we lost." No, he's not. He absolutely is not. Like, there are opportunities. You're getting the ball in your playmaker's hands to make a play. Did you see Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen drop a catch to go in the end zone? I didn't.
Like
Did you
said,
see any big time drops by those two players at all that game?
I'm not giving 100% of the blame for Justin Herbert, and I don't think
I
that
know.
anybody should.
I wasn't saying you were. I'm just
either.
saying, like, their guys made plays, our guys didn't.
Right.
That's
And
not a scheme
with you
thing.
there.
That, like, I just, man, it's for some reason people just don't like the idea that they just got beat. Like, it was an ugly game.
Well, you never like to go into a fight thinking that you're going to lose, obviously.
Well, no, but like, but when you go into a fight and you do lose, like, sometimes you just lost. Like, there isn't going to be this like aha moment of like, oh, if we had Shane Steichen instead of Joe Lombardi, that game would have been won. No.
I'll say this. The Chargers, when they had Shane Steichen, nobody was talking about his magical play calling last year. I sure as hell can't recall it.
Nope.
And people were saying the exact same thing about Shane Steichen as they currently are about Joe Lombardi right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. Everybody's up in their feelings. And you are more than welcome to put blame where blame is due. If you want Joe Lombardi out of there, fine. I'm not going to say you're ridiculous in your thought process because I understand why you're frustrated. Trust me, I'm a little bit frustrated with it too as far as the play calling goes. But guess what? When was the last time that this team or this owner fired any coach mid-season? Just come to the realization that it's not going to happen. It's like the run defense.
Okay, but
run defense. It's not fully getting fixed.
But that's my problem, Jake, is that's not the problem. Like, Ronaldo Hill and Joe Lombardi are not the reason why Derwin James and whoever it was ran into each other on a fourth down play in the end zone to give up a touchdown to a bobbling tight end.
I'm with you.
Like, at some point, Derwin James has to make the interception. Derwin James has to not run into that guy.
Look, this is the beauty part of being a fan of an NFL franchise.
Agreed.
Because everybody has their own opinions. And everybody's going to be frustrated for whatever the reasons. Whether it seems outrageous to some or normal to others, so be it. But try to keep it in perspective that just a little bit of perspective. And this is the only positive note that I am going to sit on here with Dan Wolkenstein with this show, because he's not necessarily talking about let's pump the brakes. He's talking about, look, if you're going to blame somebody, that's totally fine, but put the blame where it's due and make it make sense. And I'm with him for that. I have a lot more blame to place around, and I am much more of the doom and gloom perspective. And, I'll admit, I am kind of kicking open that door just a little bit, getting into draft mode, and it
Don't,
feels
I
pretty
knew you were going to
damn
mention
good.
that word. I am not
But-
ready for that word right now.
But Dan, you see, you're already getting up in your feelings. I'm getting up in my feelings. We've talked about everybody else getting up in their feelings, but I want to hear it from some people. So can we please go to the first call on the Chargers Unleashed hotline?
Oof. Yes. So, Chargers Unleashed hotline, brought to you by MyBookie. Call us 323-374-5651. You can have your voicemail, your take, and your feelings heard on an upcoming episode. Jake, we had quite a few calls. We're going to try to get through 3 today from this game. We might use some for another episode or so. So, first call comes in from the 570 area code. Let's hear what they have to say about this Chargers loss to the Minnesota Vikings.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking, the voicemails as usual. I just want to say that I know everyone's going to talk about, hey, the defense played really bad, but in my opinion, I really think the defense played pretty well when they were supposed to. I mean, the time of possession was like 30 minutes to 18 at one point. The offense, point blank, lost us the game. You can talk about Joe Lombardi. You can talk about, Joshua Kelly not picking up the right blitz when we were pinned. You can talk about a lot of things. I feel like it was a complete failure from the offensive side of the football because defensively, look, Justin Jefferson presents a lot of problems. Tavon Campbell is not our starting cornerback. No shocker, that he didn't play too well against Justin Jefferson. Chris Harris Jr. was frustrated at one point too, but these guys were exhausted. I mean, they're playing with spare parts right now. Jerry Tillery is not great. Tavon Campbell's a backup. Alohi Gilman's very young, and Chris Harris Jr. doesn't look good, at least the last 2 weeks. Today he looked not horrible, but not great. The fact is, I think Brandon Staley's doing a good job with the defense. I feel like this game should be talked about the offensive side of the football and what they couldn't do. Too many 3-and-outs, point blank. But it's 5-4. It's still a long season. We'll see how things unfold. Don't panic now. Pulse up.
I love that take, by the way.
Of course,
Perspective, critical, honest, but hopeful. That's like my slogan for just me.
All of a sudden, you sound like a car salesman. It's just like, I love that. Honest, perspective, great gas mileage. No, to be honest, that was a very straightforward take, and I think it hit on all the points. And Dan, I think we really have to come to the realization of this because, you talk about the aspects of Justin Herbert and, not placing any blame on him. And I get that, Dan, but how do you, here's a stat again, Daniel Popper. And this one's really wide eye-opening when you look at this. Justin Herbert now ranks 29th among 34 qualified quarterbacks in air yards per passing attempt at 7.22. What is happening? And it's almost like the Mike Williams effect. They put his stats out there for the first 5 games. I think it was like he had 31 catches through the first 5 games of the season. And over the last 4, he's only had 10. It's just a weird thing that this Chargers team has always done. Doesn't matter to the player, doesn't matter the situation, that much like them being allergic to taking advantage of mismatches, apparently they also get allergic to going with the trends and what works.
Defense is doing good. Nope, we're done.
Yeah,
Offense shining. Nope.
Even if it's not broke, we're not gonna use it. That's a great working part over there. It doesn't matter. It's really not for me. But it's gonna give you 100,000 more miles in gas. I don't care. I'm gonna ride my bike. So
I'm gonna ride my bike with no handlebars.
It's Dan. I said this to you earlier today, talking about this. To me, the critical point in this game where the Chargers had the best opportunity to take control of that game.
Mm-hmm.
Your first half was absolutely horrendous. You had to come out with your opening possession and score. You did that. Minnesota gets up, offense comes out, and normally from what we've seen, that whether it's the offense doing something good or the defense doing something good, the other unit is not going to help each other out that often. And this was the rare occasion where your offense scored and your defense gave you another opportunity just like that.
3 and out.
In forcing Minnesota into a 3 and out. And you thought to yourself, okay, I think that first drive that they had in the second half at the end was a 10-play drive. It was a very good-looking drive. You're like, okay, here we go. Here's the rhythm that we've been looking for. And you thought to yourself, okay, right here, we can just take control of this. And then it completely sputtered for the next several series, this offense did. And it never could get back into it. And it's one thing that Brandon Staley has talked about is that they are still having trouble finding tempo and consistency in getting things continuously going when it comes to the offense. So there is an issue here. There is an unbelievable issue that I think just can't get swept under the rug.
No, I
any
agree.
Longer. It really can't.
And yes, when that happened twice, because that happened at the end of the first half and it happened at the beginning in the middle of the third quarter, where for as bad as that first half went, Chargers got the ball, scored a touchdown. Like this was like with a minute and 40 seconds left in the first half. Chargers get the ball, get a touchdown, get the ball back with a minute 40 left, force a 3 and out, only having to burn 1 timeout. They get the ball back with like a minute and 20 left, and I think they had 1 or 2 timeouts left. Did nothing with it. They got it at the 50. Andre Roberts had like a 20-yard return. You're like, oh my gosh, this is a gift. You get the ball at the 50-yard line, down 3 at halftime with the ball at the beginning of the third quarter, and you give it right back. Then fast forward, do the same thing in the third quarter. And then you give up 18 yards. You were 1st and 25 and in 3rd and 20 at 2 different times in that last series. And each time, Devon Campbell gets exposed. Like, you say you want it all the rest of the game. Games usually end in 1 possession. You can't give up 3rd and 20s like that. You just can't and expect to win. And that's what happened. And I will say one last thing on that call. Chris Harris, I don't think really had that bad of a game. On the play that people were talking about where he was pissed off, I believe you can see him pointing to, I think it was Alohi Gilman behind him, who was supposed to cover the inside. He points to it before the play snaps. And guess where the receiver goes? Right where Chris Harris is pointing to get coverage at. I believe he's talking to Alohi Gilman in the back. I don't think he's talking to the linebacker. Don't think he's talking to the Vikings. So, miscommunication there. Again, the caller said it. Young guys. Alohi Gilman. Like, we're relying on Alohi Gilman right now. And, look. People talk about the lack of depth on this team, okay? There's a difference between the same old Chargers losses and this. This was not a same old Chargers loss. People talk about like issues with injuries, and some of the names that you're accustomed or that you're fearful of hearing getting injuries are not the names that you're hearing. And yet we're still talking about injuries, and we're still talking about lack of depth. When the guys that we really need to stay healthy are out on the field and they're still not winning. So pick one. Like, you got to pick one.
Well, Dan, the reason for that is, and it kind of goes back to my argument here just a couple minutes ago, is that, okay, so the Chargers are without Mike Davis. You're going to have to go with Tavon Campbell. All right. As much as we know that, and as much as we know that there's a number of different playmakers that are still on this defense, the unfortunate part is the opposing offense still knows that.
What do you think the Vikings are thinking? Like, oh, Tavon Campbell or Asante Samuel? Yeah, let's go to Asante. Of course they're going to take
advantage of it. And I think that's part of the issue, Dan. So it's just like, not only do you know you have injuries, but then that player is going to get exposed. And then the narrative, which I still think holds water, is the lack of depth on this team, both offensively and defensively at certain key positions. But I think on the other side of that flip coin is that, okay, well, we played the Baltimore Ravens, who
talk about it,
have not had that good of a secondary this year and couldn't take advantage of that whatsoever. You couldn't do anything against a rookie quarterback. He showed you up. He outplayed your rookie MVP. And then you come into a nail biter against Philly with all of the injuries that they were dealing with, and that still came down to the wire. And then Minnesota with everything that they had on their injury report. We all knew who was injured and who was out of that game. And you still couldn't do it.
Their playmakers, I'll say it again, their playmakers played better than our playmakers. The guys that they get paid $20 million plus, or will be at some point, guarantee you, Justin Jefferson, made more plays than our guys did. Like, you can't blame. You can blame depth, but when your depth piece is gone.
I'm simply comparing offense to offense here, because if for both teams they had defensive guys, a handful of defensive guys out.
Yep.
So if Minnesota can do it and take advantage of our secondary with its injury problems and make them look horrible, why are we not able to do this?
Why didn't Mike Williams catch it?
It's not solely on the drops, Dan. It's
no, but in a game like this, in a one possession game, like those critical plays matter.
I got it. It's the drops have been a problem for the Chargers for the past 4 weeks, with the exception of the Philly game. They cleaned that up a little bit. But Baltimore, New England, and yesterday, you had critical drops, some that were absolutely just inexcusable.
I agree. All right, Jake, you asked for voice. Let's get you another one. 323-374-5651, Chargers Unleashed hotline. 209 area called in right after the game was over, so I'm sure this is going to be level-headed. Let's see what they have to say about this Chargers ugly loss against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yay! Bolt up, guys. Bolt up. It's going to be all right. I like what I saw out of Kenneth Murray, and you guys have a great day, but walking out of the stadium right now is real hard to do. Real hard. We gave away a lot. We didn't take advantage of what we should have, and we missed plays, maybe. A couple bad turnovers. Come on to the next game. I look forward to maybe waiting for the year show. That's how I recuperate.
Well, see, Dan, right there. As if the timing couldn't have been better, said, didn't take advantage of the things that we should have. I would assume that one of those would be mismatch opportunities from our offensive weapons to their lack of pieces that they had on defense. I'll assume that that's part of it. I'll also assume that part of it is the drops, because they came at the worst possible time for this offense. And yes, it contributes again to the offense sputtering and getting off the field and putting your defense out there in a complete, just ridiculous difference of time and possession that the Vikings had this over the Chargers. So yeah, it's hard to do when your opposing offense has so many plays to run against you. And the strength that we really thought that would carry this team, rookie of the year quarterback, and yet this is the unit, and these are the players that are, in so many words, holding us back.
It's tough, and it's frustrating. But you have to tip your hat to some of the plays that they made. Like that Kendricks interception was ridiculous. Like some of those Moss, Justin Jefferson catches, I'm like, what are you gonna do? I mean, granted, it was Tavon Campbell. It wasn't, Mike Davis, Asante Samuel, Chris Harris. Like none of those crazy catches were on them. Tavon Campbell could turn his head around, they could do more. But like those are just ridiculous plays. Kirk Cousins has some throws. I'm like, he never makes these throws. This is incredible. They just made more plays. I'm not blaming that on coaching. Like they just took advantage, and you got to tip your hat when another team just steps up. We had the opportunities to do so, and we didn't.
Here's the other thing, Dan, and I have said this a couple of times. And this is where I kind of put a little bit of blame on Justin Herbert.
Okay.
Okay, I do not blame him for the interception because that's a great play by Kendricks.
It could have been a better throw, but like that's a really hard interception.
Right, but I'll even stick with that same play. To me, Justin Herbert, and as phenomenal as Keenan Allen is, everybody always used to say when it was a third down situation and you had Antonio Gates on your team, it's like he was Mr. Automatic. Why wouldn't you look his direction type of thing? But people are keying in on this factor about Justin Herbert is that I believe he gets sometimes a little too Keenan Allen happy. And I will stick with that same play, Dan, because if you go back and you watch it again, Mike Williams is wide open in the flat on the left side of the field. I mean, there's nobody within 8 yards of him at most. And whether it's this play or it was throughout the game, Justin Herbert's first initial reaction is, where is 13? And I get that. You put your ball in the hands of your best playmaker in your offense. But over the last several weeks, I mean, we've even seen Justin Herbert completing passes to Keenan Allen when there's 2 or 3 guys draped around him. So to me, I just look at that and say, it's like, hey, if it's completed, fantastic. You did it. Great play. Convert it. Keep moving.
It's like Steph Curry in the NBA. It's like some of the shots you're like, I mean.
But I also think of it as just like, is there someone else in one-on-one coverage? If there's that many dudes around 13, that means that either somebody's wide open right now or somebody's in single coverage. And just go through your progressions just a little bit better rather than your first and only instinct is looking for him.
I also would like to see Justin Herbert run a little bit more. Like I'm not wanting him to go get killed. I'm not wanting him to do anything crazy. Like I don't need him to be Lamar Jackson. But like the dude has legs. And there were a couple of times where I saw them do kind of that RPO and he ends up running it up, ends up giving the ball to the running back. I'm like, you got 30 yards over here and there's nobody on this side except 2 receivers for you and 1 secondary. Like you can go 40 yards right now. Like this is crazy. And I know we don't want him to get hurt. Like I get it. But like I think it kind of goes back to like the team, the offense feels like it's in kind of this muddy quicksand, and they need that rhythm, that tempo, and they need things that give them options versus just like throw it to a receiver, hope he's open, maybe go to second read, whatever. And doing things like those RPOs where you have options to go to other receivers or to running backs or run it or extend the play. I just don't see enough of those that make it easier on the offense to get in rhythm and to get in tempo. And so, look, like it was a tough loss. It was a frustrating loss, disappointing. Everybody was upset. We're no longer at the top of the AFC West right now. But like sometimes you just have to take it on the chin. And I think that's what this team's doing. I still believe in this team. I still think it's a playoff team. It's a tough loss. But like, don't look now. They could be 6-4 in a hurry. And all this is going to be for nothing. There are some things that have to be fixed, and this team is not going to be fixed in 1 year. We're not going to go from a 7-9 team to Super Bowl winner, usually, in 1 year. And right now, they're slated to be better than they were last year, which, for the most part, like that's what we wanted. Go back to preseason, we were thinking if we can get to the playoffs, win a playoff game, that's a success. That's where we're at right now. Like, we're still there. and the sky is falling for half of the fan base.
Dan, again, it's a not only is it the simple factor of the mediocrity at best, or let's just say, for being really honest, underachieving, just porous output by this team over the last several years. 2018 being an exception, of course, based off the record that was there. The fan base is ready to start getting back to the winning type of ways. And on that point that you had mentioned about, the Chargers are no longer at the top of the AFC West, with the Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos losing yesterday. Hi, familiar face. Kansas City Chiefs are back on top, and Patrick Mahomes looked like the old Patrick Mahomes in last night's game.
Whenever all those people, real quick, whenever all those people are that were saying how the Chiefs are over, they're not going to fix this, they're not making the playoffs.
Look, it's a rarity that you have the Chiefs do what they have done over the past month, and with not good results. So when that happens, and the Chargers start off with a 4-1 record and now go on a 1-3 slide, you're damn right people are going to be pissed and have right to be, because it's not going to be often, for as long as Patrick Mahomes is in the AFC West division, that you're going to have opportunities like this to take advantage of. Again, first rule of getting into the playoffs: win your division. And the Chargers have not done that in a long, long time. And when the opportunities arise like this, whether it's bad luck or not for the rest of the teams in the division, you got to take advantage of it. You have to take advantage of it. And if we're being honest with ourselves, out of the last 3 losses that we have had in this skid, 2 of them should have been winnable games. Yep. Should have been winnable.
And I go back to that, and I think that's the frustrating part for me, anyways. Is you look back and there were in this game, for example, there were some great plays, individual plays. Like on the whole, their offense didn't really have to do much. They just had incredible plays at the most opportunistic times, most crucial times, and they had to have it. They got it. Go back to the Philly game. Their offense didn't really do much, except Devonta Smith went off. But otherwise, they had 70 yards outside of him throwing the ball.
So what does that say about your team defensively then, Dan? If they didn't have to do that much, what does that say about your team defensively? I get it from the Philly standpoint. We've talked about that with Jalen Hurts being a mobile quarterback and Devonta Smith having his day. And yeah, you got the best, one of the best receiving corps in Minnesota. Dalvin Cook was the focal point of the Chargers defense and taking him out as much as they could. So if they didn't really have to do much, what does that say about your defense? I think we've already touched on that. The injury aspect and the fact that we're playing with so-called spare parts, yeah, that's there. So what is it then?
And again, to be honest, and I think that's what people want answers to. And unfortunately, sometimes either it's like you're treading on you're walking on eggshells here when you have to talk about the stars. But at some point, your stars have to overcome some of that, because people talk about injuries as an issue, Jake, but I believe the Chargers are in the top 5 of the most healthiest rosters in the NFL in terms of people on IR. And in terms of star players on their squad, I think over the last, 5 years, you would pray to have this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got the dudes that you say you need to have to win, and your depth isn't great, they should be able to overcome. They should. I'm sorry, but Derwin James is all pro level. As much as we're putting on his plate, he can do it all and more. Go ask Derwin James if he thinks he's the reason why they lost that game. I guarantee you he'll say he should have had an interception and he should have ended that game. Like, go ask Keenan Allen, go ask Mike Williams, go ask Austin Eckler, go ask Justin Herbert. They'll all tell you they should have done more to win. And unfortunately, the answer is their biggest players didn't make enough big plays to win the games. Period. Like, people don't want to accept that, but like, that's what happened. And that's not a new Chargers. Like, that's not an old Chargers thing. That's a new Chargers thing. Old Chargers, clock management. They can't call plays. Their star players are injured. Coaching sucks. They cripple at the last second. Costly turnovers. All that. Like, that's not happening. This is a very different outcome, or same outcome, a very different path to get there. But these, I believe, are correctable. I'd rather have these corrections than the others. Like, I trust Derwin James to come back and put this team on his back. And for a large part of the game, he does that. But, like, you saw his reaction in the end zone when he should have had the interception. Like, he knew it. That's 3 points. You saw him and the other guy just lay out flat on the ground, knowing that they just gave up a 4th down touchdown on the goal line, and they ran into each other.
I saw Austin Eckler's reaction when he dropped the surefire catch. I mean, he was pissed. I think he went right to the sidelines. And you could see the frustration on his face. I get that. As frustrated as we are, Dan, they're 10 times as more.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is, like, we want to sit here and blame Lombardi and Ronaldo Hill and Brandon Staley and Justin Herbert and the depth and all of this stuff. Like, sure, like, I mean, there could be things that could be fixed, but you got to blame the dudes too. And people just, like, no one's going to sit here and say, oh, we need to replace Derwin James. Obviously, you're not wanting to do that. And there's a lot of things that he did that were great. But, like, sometimes you need that superstar thing. Like Joey Bosa gets a strip sack kind of thing, right? You see that ridiculous throw, that godlike throw that Keenan Allen receives from Justin Herbert, where you're like, how is that even possible to be caught? There just weren't enough of those.
I think what it is, Dan, is that, and you said it, it's the old school way of the Chargers losing. This game and New England, if you want to isolate this game, it was blown opportunities. Didn't create enough plays. The New England game, you really beat yourselves. You shot yourself in the foot, which should be no surprise because that's what New England makes opposing teams do all the time, and this is being proven even after Tom Brady has left the team.
See the Browns game. Jeez.
But those are the quintessential historical ways that the Chargers lost games. And Dan, when you felt the first wave of the first 5 games and the 4-1 record and the way that the Chargers were winning and getting away from that old narrative that everybody wants to talk about are the Chargers this, the Chargers that. These are normally the games that they lose. This is the most Chargers are going to Charger type things. The chokers, if you will, as they have been labeled a number of different times. These last 2 losses that they have suffered against the Vikings and the Patriots were remembrance of that. And yes, winning in the NFL is hard. But when you lose the way that the Chargers lost in a number of different fashions, whether it's doing it to themselves or just not creating enough opportunities, mistakes galore, and whether that's on the players or the coaching doesn't matter. It's just as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to go back to that type of a narrative, Dan. And so reacting the way that people are going to react, that's just going to be their natural reaction out of frustration. But in reality, nobody wants to hear any of that stuff from the masses about this football team because we're told Brandon Staley's going to come in and change the culture. Now, fine print. That does not mean that Brandon Staley is going to win every game. You just would rather have yourself be in a competitive loss than in a loss where you say, what in the blue hell was that?
That's fair. Look, I think Chargers fans, Bolt fam, we have been in and been through so much. And I think all of this passion, all of the frustrations and emotions come from a place of desperation and feeling of need to see this team finally win. And seeing other teams win and seeing the way that we lose. And like, I get it. And I know people are like, this one I feel like aged us a bit. And this is a tough loss, but it's not the same kind of loss. So we've got more voicemails, Jake. We're going to get to those on the next episode when we kind of go through previewing the primetime game against the Steelers. So don't look now. We've got a big game coming up. But I want people to just, I think, this is just as much therapy for you and me as it is for folks tuning in, watching, or listening. But take a second and go back and watch the highlights, whatever you want to do, and ask yourself, like, what really was the reason we lost that game? Versus what's everybody on Twitter saying? And I'll just go with that. Or whatever. Like, do better than some of these lazy takes that I'm seeing. And I know it's all coming from a good place. I get it for the most part. But we have to stay supportive of not only one another, but also the team. And it was kind of funny, too. Not funny, but it was nice to see, like, some of the players, Jake, at the end of that game in, like, their, whether it was their press conferences, whether it was, like, on Twitter or Instagram. And, like, they're actually kind of, like, taking responsibility and, like, apologizing to fans at the stadium and at the game who spent the whole day going there and back and all this stuff, saying that they do better and they appreciate them and they hear you and they see you and they want to do better and they'll make it up to you. Like, that's the stuff you want to see. Like, they're recognizing this fan base. And I think they are also recognizing that the fan base is invested in them. And I think that makes them want to play harder. Which, if we're going to be honest, this team was right to question how invested this fan base was going into this season. Looking back the last few years. Like, it's just a fact. Like, there's been an issue. Now, obviously, there's economics. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that happened the last few years. But still, we're building something. The culture is changing. It doesn't change in 1 year. If the Chargers won the Super Bowl this year, that would be arguably like the craziest culture shift in the history of the NFL. Like, just if you know what the Chargers look like the last 10 years. So, embrace the process. Enjoy what we have. Go to a game. Have some fun. And be respectful. Be kind. Enjoy it. Drink a couple beers. Have some fun. By the way, do not come to me or go on Twitter in the beginning of the second quarter telling me the game's over, pack it up, don't miss up on everything. You want to hit the traffic, make sure you can catch all the whatever happy hours anywhere you can get them. Like, come on, guys. Like, let's at least, like, get to the third quarter before we pack it in, okay? Remember what we all said at the Browns game?
I mean, I know. Who was saying that crap?
I don't know who would say that stuff because there's all optimism in this podcast. Jake, anything else we want to tell the great people of the Bolt fan before we head out of here after this heartbreaking loss against the Vikings?
I don't really know what more I can. I don't know how I can outdo your basically telling everybody to go burn sage and play yoga music and watch football and gain perspective. That's a hell of a therapy concept there, Dan. So I don't really know how I can outdo that. The Chargers have a tough. Some people may not believe it, and despite who may not be playing this coming week, but they have a tough 3-game AFC run coming up. Steelers, Broncos. Regardless of what you want to say against Denver, they play us tough.
We lost to Michael Vick. Like, do you remember that game?
You lost to Drew Lock last year in an unbelievable comeback.
Freaking Lock.
So Steelers have always historically played us tough. Doesn't matter the situation.
Mm-hmm.
If today, or if yesterday's performance by Justin Jefferson was any indicator as far as what we might see against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in a couple weeks, look out for that.
By the way, Jake, I'm going to be there in Cincinnati.
You are going to be there. Yeah, so safe travels to you. But it's funny how this whole narrative's changing now that the Chargers have dropped a few games, that where we thought, okay, all we needed to do was get past that 6-game gauntlet of hell. And then you look at it, and much like has been displayed throughout a number of different teams throughout the AFC, I don't know what the AFC wants to do. There's teams that are losing that are number 1 seeds and number 2 seeds that shouldn't be losing. You know, you look at Buffalo last week and the 9-6 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You look at Baltimore dropping to Miami this past Thursday. The AFC does not know what the hell it wants to do. It's a freaking ball on a roulette table right now, and it's trying to decide if it wants to be black, red, or green. Who the hell knows what's going to happen? But all of a sudden, it's bringing all these teams together, and it's just making for a much more competitive second half than what we were initially thinking that we were going to have. So definitely not going to be easy by any means over these next several weeks. So that draft mode, door maybe just be getting kicked in just a little bit more.
No, we're not letting that happen. We're on to Pittsburgh.
The first sentence of the petition for draft mode has been typed. The memo is not finished, Dan, but the first sentence has been typed.
Oh, no.
So depending on how the next 3 weeks go,
no,
that paragraph may be finished, and the talks.
If I can have the Chargers win solely, so I'm gonna have to hear Jake talk about draft talk this early, I will call it a win. For any other reason, my goodness. Okay, for Jake in his beautiful backwards hat, scruffy beard today that he hasn't quite cleaned, but also it's not long. It's pretty sharp. You can find him at Jake T. Hefner on Twitter. I'm sorry?
I said it's stubble. So what? I have like the
you have like a 4 o'clock shadow.
Okay. I was wondering, like, what do you mean it's not clean? What are you talking about?
No, it's not like.
I'm not clean shaven.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I'm used to the beard. You used to grow it out a bit. Anyways, for Jake Hefner, at Jake D. Hefner on Twitter, myself, at Chargers Homer. We hope you guys enjoyed the show. Again, if you do not already, like, subscribe, follow, turn on the bell notifications, leave us a review, do all that good stuff. Leave us a call, a voicemail at Chargers Unleashed hotline. Thank you guys so much. Again, Chargers are 5-4, above 500, half a game out of the AFC West. Big game coming against the Steelers. Hope to see everyone there. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening. Bolt up. Talk to you later.